Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we're going to be recapping episode 19 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role. And before I start, I just want to say if you hear any banging, crashing, or power tools in the background, that is because my house is under construction, and I could not find any reasonable time where it's not being made sound-wise. So, here we go. To start the recap, we start at Estani's home, where he tells the party what the Lumos twins were doing, learning about the realms and specifically Ruidus, the Red Moon. The twins and him became close after they read some of his research and reached out to him to learn directly from the source itself. We learned that the twins died with none of their belongings left behind. It appears the attackers may have gotten away with their stuff. Oshad, during the attack, managed to kill one before he fell to some sort of poison. One of the last things the Lumos twins and Estani talked about was the Omen Archive, and they were going to potentially visit it. And this Omen Archive seems to be a list of Ruidus-born people and when they were born, specifically what day and year seems to be on it, and who was born under this strong Ruidus moon. He also tells the party of what the Ruidus-born people actually are. They are people born under the red moon of Ruidus during strangely brighter times when it seems to be at its peak. Some believe that it is a curse to be Ruidus born. Others believe that it is destined for greatness, and he tells us of a few people who happen to be Ruidus born. The former ruler of Teldore before he was taken down by Teldore. Estani tells the party that the twins didn't leave notes behind outside of what was left behind in Jushar. And nothing was found in any rooms they stayed in while they were there. And this sort of put a mild end to that lead for both Imogen and Orym about the attackers and about the potential connection between Estani, the Lumos twins, Imogen, and Imogen's mother about this sort of red storm. For now. Fern asks if Keyleth of the Ereshari happened to be a Ruidus born, but the exact dates of her birth aren't known, and the exact dates of the moon being at its peak aren't known to Estani. The notes of that would be in the Omen archives. Estani asks them if they'd like to come over later to take a look at Ruidus when it's higher in the sky and they are able to see it better at night. The party say yes, but they need to get ready for their heist, and tell them that they will be back later to take a look, and then they go out shopping. See? Crash bang in the background. I'm sure that was picked up by my mic. They get some supplies for the heist, like some fishing wire, magnets, and a jack-in-the-box for distraction, just to name a few things that they picked up along the way. Imogen and Ashton also pick up a gift for Laudna, a puppet for Pate, or a puppet with the intention of maybe being Pate's girlfriend. They go back to the inn to see if the silver dragonborn they met before arriving in the Heartmoor city is also staying there, as they suspect them to be the opposition for their heist. They learn the dragonborn and her compatriots are probably there, but they don't get exact evidence. And Matt reveals that Imogen being able to read minds is not going to be an easy way to answer every question they have whenever. Laudna receives the puppet from Imogen after a really creepy telekinesis moment where the fucker comes out of the bag and walks across the ground. Fuck puppets. Anyway, Pate immediately grabs its ass. She gave it a name, and for whatever reason the name is escaping me at the moment. The party, minus Chetney, return to Estani's to look at Ruidus, which for a little while, after Ashton steps up to take a look at it, where he sees a red moon with sort of strange topography of, mountains and, moon craters, but it's a little difficult for him to see as well, until Orym steps up, where he sees that it's moving storms on top of these mountains every once in a while, and these storms are red with the red lightning, very similar to Imogen's dreams. And he helps her see this, and they begin to sort of ask what this connection is between the Ruidus born and these storms. Chetney was on lookout while everyone else was looking at Ruidus, because he is very familiar with the moon already. He doesn't need to go look at it. And despite him being very vigilant during his lookout moments, he doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. He sort of looks around, sees that no one is sort of shifting too much, because he is looking for the opposing team, and unfortunately they don't seem to be very active at this point in the day. They rest. After meeting up with Chetney, they rest, and during this time, Imogen has a dream. She's back at her home in the fields, and the red storm is before her. Unlike her previous attempts, she ignores her mother's pleas to run and decides to walk straight into it. And when she does this, she is cold and uncomfortable, and she sees 8 faceless figures before her. And she's confused. She doesn't feel welcomed in this moment, and she wakes up from that. And at this point, her Fern and Orem were already awake, and they kind of see her jet up. And Fern takes her hand out of her pocket as she was just making sure the purple stone from previous episodes, wasn't doing anything too weird to Imogen. They wake Laudna up, and the 4 of them begin talking about the dream, what it could mean, the connection with Ruidus, and they begin writing all of this down, and they think they're going to try to trace their steps back a few times to see different things, if they can pick up on other things from previous talks that Laudna and Imogen had about this sort of dreams, the cycle, everything she does different. And Fern also notices that her her markings from her, what basically seems to be some sort of connection with these dreams, have grown. They've gone up her arm a little bit more. By only I think Matt said a quarter of an inch, which isn't overly noticeable to most people, but if you're looking for it, and according to Imogen, this sort of thing's been happening for a while. We also learned that her powers have these dreams and her powers have manifested within the last 10 years. After that, the next day, they go to the Twilight Museum, where Yvonne sort of lays out the rules for the heist, and he says that if there is any unnecessary damage to my museum, if you manage to get inside, you will be disqualified. And the question of what is unnecessary damage, we'll have to find out once it happens, or after it happens, and they might be disqualified even after getting the earring. Also, they learn that the target for this heist is a lapis golden earring, which was worn by some sort of person created by a genie and sort of caused the collapse of his empire. The 2 teams look at each other up and down as it is revealed that the Silver Dragonborn and her team that they met before in the Heartmoor were in fact the people that they were going up against in this heist. The 2 teams look each other up and down, and FCG sort of sees the weapons on each of the opposing members. A few have some telling things about what they are, a giant warhammer being one of them, indicating a barbarian, and one of them has no weapons, indicating that they might be a heavy magic user. And at this point, it's kind of pointed out that the rules seem to be kind of flexible, that it isn't necessarily laid out, and Imogen begins reading Yvonne's mind, and he kind of is getting frustrated at the constant questioning of what the rules are, and, the loopholes in his logic, and he was like, I had a much grander idea of what this was all going to be, and it was going to be way more epic, and they're just asking too many questions. And eventually the 2 teams get separated, and they are told to find their own way in, and they are let loose, and that is where Matt ends the episode. A shorter one. I think this was the second shortest episode. I'm not terribly sure. It felt short. There were a few things about this episode that I really enjoyed. It had a few D&D-esque things about it. At one point, that I didn't really cover in that recap, but that I really wanted to talk about afterwards. They did something completely pointless. While they were investigating the death site of the Lumos twins, they found this fountain that Ashton stuck his hand in, and for whatever reason, it was able to take his arm further than what the fountain itself looked like. So he stuck his hand in there, and instead of reaching the back end before it sort of scooped down, it just kept going. So they put Fern on a rope as a frog in there, and she entered this, what seemed like a pocket dimension, with islands and two floating eyes that came at her, and that was when they decided to pull her out. It was pointless, but it's also like, that happens in regular D&D games, which I very much appreciated, as a lot of the stuff that, has been happening lately, not lately, but there's been a lot of, it seems too perfect in a lot of ways, and that was a nice little fuck around moment, which shows to me that this game isn't perfect, and I really appreciate seeing that, especially after last week. Not going to mention it anymore. But I love that stuff. I love seeing that sort of fuck around. This was almost pointless, but they're able to now make funny moments based around this, whereas like, we need to get rid of somebody, they're going right in that fountain because no one's coming out of that without a tether. So that kind of stuff was fun. Also, still not a huge fan of shopping. Shockingly, they split the party, and to me, this seemed like a perfect instance for Matt to sort of get two of them to be attacked by a group, maybe even the other heist team, but the other heist team didn't really know who they were until they arrived at the Twilight Mansion, or Twilight Museum. So, definitely not something that was required, in my opinion, but I would have liked to have seen some sort of conflict in this episode. There wasn't very much conflict. It was more so a lot of talking, some shopping, more talking, and finally the beginnings of the heist, which I'm very excited for. So yeah, I'm excited for next week. I'm really excited to see this heist. I had a few thoughts about the heist that I made a video on Tuesday. So if you want to know my thoughts about what the heist could potentially be, or specifically what the themes of the heist might be, go check that video out. I will probably leave it in one of the last two bubbles here as the episode is coming to an end. Yeah, that's it. That's all. I'll see you guys on Tuesday.